Welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast, where real-life issues facing the family and the church are addressed with bold and uncompromising truth. It's time to reject the mediocrity of the day, live courageously in the face of danger, and declare, Not On My Watch. Here are your hosts, Jeff and Rochelle Ferguson.
Welcome to the Not On My Watch podcast. We're Jeff and Rochelle, and we're talking today about something that we've been studying for a long time. It's going to be in our new book that's coming out, but it's something that's worth talking about even today, just even in anticipation of that. So
everybody who studies generations, specifically we're hearing it more with Gen Z, you hear about the decline in worldview.
Biblical worldview.
You're right. The decline in biblical worldview.
I mean, everybody has a worldview.
Yeah, 100% of people, you have a worldview. The question is, our question is actually, Not On My Watch's question, do you have a biblical worldview?
Yeah, and the trends are alarming.
Yes.
Now, I think trends tell you, I guess, like an overarching picture. They should sound an alarm, but hopefully they're not. They shouldn't be. To me, they're more of like, wow, we've got some work to do. I don't think we should get down about it.
I think sometimes
it's sobering.
It is sobering, and I think sometimes people like, the sky is falling, what are we going to do? And I think it should serve to wake us up. However, what you're saying is, there is good news. If we look at this and what actually can be done to reverse this, the sky is not falling, and there is some good news. I think
what we should say is this: there is hope.
Yeah. Yes.
The direction is not good.
Correct.
But there's always a way to reverse direction.
Yes. I don't want to be ever an individual who sits there and says, well, we can't do anything about it. We just have to wait until the Lord comes, or whatever the Lord's going to do. We can't do anything. That is a false narrative. There's a lot we can do. We are still on this earth.
The statistics are stark. But with Jesus, there's always hope.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that is the we had to get there. We had to get there.
We'll find our way.
We're going to get there.
We'll find our way.
No, I think this is important. So what is a biblical worldview? Before we even talk about the percentages, worldview answers some questions that all of us have to wrestle with. And whether we want to admit it or not, every single person is possessing a worldview.
Yes.
The question is your worldview biblical? Not is your worldview pop Christianity? Because these are different. There are a lot of people, when you talk about, one of the questions that worldview answers is morality. Okay, so, if you ask, survey a bunch of people, really a lot of people, even people who claim to be Christians, their worldview says if you're good enough, that's going to get you into heaven, which your destiny is also another question that worldview answers.
Yes.
And so, again, if you're watching this and you go, is that true? That is not true. You can't ever be good enough to get into heaven.
Yeah, we're not, the Lord, I guess, is not, eternity is not graded on a curve. Well, I'm better than this person. I'm better than I was yesterday. Biblical worldview is totally different.
Right. So worldview answers some of those questions. Yes. Worldview answers, does God exist? Worldview answers, is there, what do we do with the problems of the world? If you don't know that there's problems, turn on the news and then turn it off. Don't hang out there. But there are definitely problems in the world. Why am I here?
Yes.
These are the questions that worldview answers. Every single person is going to come to ask these questions at some point. And I guess the alarming trend that we are seeing, and a lot of these statistics come from Barna research. So Barna has been studying, this group has been studying worldview for decades. And they are seeing a sharp decline in the generations of those who adhere to a biblical worldview.
And it's not just, we think about, Gen Z. Oh, Gen Z, but it's been going on for our entire ministry. We've been talking about the trends as they've been descending.
Yeah, I remember us talking about this 15 or 16 years ago when we were youth pastors. We were saying, okay, if we don't do something here, we were talking about, people being grounded in the Word.
Yes.
We're going to be on this sharp decline. And and we are.
And can I just say, as I remember sharing this, I felt like people looked at me like, "Come on, that's really not you. You are just fear mongering." And so you don't want to be that, but that's where it was headed, and that's where we have actually arrived at. So
Gen Z, which would be basically all the kids that are currently in high school, college-age kids. A few of them have headed into the workforce after high school or college. And you also have a few, like middle school, would still be considered Gen Z right now. Yeah. The Gen Z population as a whole has a 4% biblical worldview. So that means 96% of Gen Z does not have a biblical worldview.
This is so alarming, because why is there hopelessness? Why is there struggle with identity? Why is there just you hit on these? Why do people when I die nothing's going to happen, or there is no
what's the solution
afterlife?
To life?
The reason they don't know what to do, the reason they feel hopeless is because their answers, they don't have a biblical worldview. And as we just outlined, a biblical worldview makes sense out of the biggest questions that humanity will ever face. And so we look at Gen Z. Why are they feel like they're just treading water? Because spiritually they are.
Yeah, because you need that foundation.
Yes, absolutely.
So we've been talking about for years lately, talking about millennials. Like Gen Z is a little bit newer on the block. We're still trying to figure out what to think about them. But for years, people were dogging on millennials. And yet millennials have a little bit higher. They have a 6% biblical worldview. But millennials are the ones who are solidly in the parenting realm right now.
Yes.
They are, several years into the workforce. They're getting married or not getting married, which is a whole nother podcast. They're, trying to make their way into adulthood, but they're struggling.
Yeah.
Millennials are struggling. Then you have Gen Xers, which you are a solid Gen X. I'm on that. I'm still on that millennial. We really are indifferent. We're indifferent.
They actually.
You're just a lot older than me.
Make a category for me.
Yeah, we're not going to talk. We're not going to talk about.
But I'm probably a solid Gen Xer.
Gen X is 7% biblical worldview.
Yeah.
So you have the millennials and the Gen Xers being pretty close in their percentage. Not a good percentage. And then you have boomers. And I think that everybody's going to be shocked when they hear this statistic. Boomers, only 10% of boomers have a biblical worldview. Okay. That number has changed.
Yeah, it has.
And so what has happened, okay, this isn't a knock on boomers podcast, but you might feel a little bit attacked if you're a boomer right now.
But we love you.
But we love you, and we're happy with I see so much value in the boomers. But let me tell you about the boomers. Yep. The boomers have abandoned the faith. They have abandoned a biblical worldview. And I know some people are like theologically like, what? No, does that mean they've lost their salvation? I don't know all those things. That is a different podcast. We'd have to go through scriptures to talk about these things. That's not what I'm talking about. The boomers have walked away from a standard.
Yes.
I'm seeing it, and we want to rail on the Xers, the millennials, and the Gen Zers. Like, how in the world could you all be so biblically illiterate? How could you be this way? Because those who are raising them are falling off the standard.
So what you're saying is, and I believe this wholeheartedly, we often hear, oh, what's going on with the next generation? The next generation, they've just gone crazy. Well, we don't have as much of a problem with the next generation as we do the ones who have raised the next generation.
Right. Exactly. I'm just sitting here going, nobody who's 11, who's a solid Gen Zer, is able to go out and purchase themselves a cell phone. They're not. Somebody's doing that for them.
Yes.
Somebody is allowing them to get on social media.
Yeah.
And it's not the Gen Zers, it's their parents. Think about the Alpha generation who's coming up, accelerating behind them. We were at the cell phone store just the other day, and the guy I was getting an upgrade, and he was going through all this, and he said the average age that he gets that people come in to buy a cell phone is like 9 years old. He said that week he had a second grader come in to get their own smartphone.
Wow.
So this is just,
I
this
don't
is
think
real.
they're probably spending a whole lot of time on the Bible app, is what you're saying?
Well, but we want to understand why there's so much confusion about spiritual and moral and truth. It's because there's a whole lot of division even in that. We're sending divided messages. And I think, you're like, why are you bringing up cell phones again? I'm not against cell phones. What I am talking about is that when we have this acceleration to this, to these influences, we are abandoning the influence that we must have on our kids.
And the biggest influence in this, I think this goes to the solution, because I think people are like, what can we do? It's kind of a lost cause. The biblical worldview is descending. It's not going to rise. We believe there's a solution.
Yeah,
And
so we should talk about that.
And the solution is making what you pass on to the next generation, your faith transmission, the most important thing. More important than anything else. I mean, you talk about technology and things like that. More important than any of that is the faith, once for all delivered to the saints, as Paul would say, handed on to the next generation. Paul said, I hand on to you what is of first importance. My question to parents is, can you hand on something that has not been of first importance to you? And I would contend, no. Our faith, our deep faith in Christ, needs to be of first importance to us. And when it is, we will find ways. It will exude from us. We will pass it on to the next generation. I don't think this is something that should stump us as church leaders, as parents. I believe it's well within our grasp to absolutely change the trajectory.
100%. I feel when we talk about this, because we go around, we do parenting seminars. We'd love to come to wherever you are to do that. We're in the midst of writing our parenting book. And when we go places and we talk about this statistic, I get this feeling a lot of times. I feel at times people are like, I hear you, but we're just waiting for God to show up in our family. Or we're just waiting for a revival in our church. Or maybe, I've heard this one before, when the glory falls, then things will get better. And I'm sorry, I'm confused by those things. I'm confused. Not because I don't pray for revival, not because I don't want to see God's glory, or not because I, have given up waiting on God. The scriptures tell us that, those that wait upon the Lord, their strength shall be renewed. They're going to rise up, all those things. So I'm not trying to completely dog those responses, but I'm sitting here going, wait. I think the Lord's waiting on you. I don't think we're waiting on the Lord to just decide at some point he's going to save Gen Z. Guess what? He already went to the cross.
He did. He did
the work. He did it all. He did it all. What is it? No, the Lord is waiting on us.
Yes.
He's waiting on us to say, guess what? Nothing else is going to be more important in our family than for our kids to know Jesus. They're going to see a real, genuine faith.
Yes.
Not. And some people say, "Oh, okay, we went to church every Sunday." You know what? That's good. That's good. Get your check mark on your attendance. But you know what? People could go to church every Sunday and not know the Lord.
Yes.
I'm talking about Jesus literally changing every part of your family. I'm not talking about praying before 3 meals.
Yes.
I am talking about literally God changing and being a part of every little part of our lives. And we're not waiting on the Lord to do that. We do this. I'm saying this. You do this.
Absolutely.
Make God a part of every part of your life.
And some people are like, well, the church I go to doesn't have this program or that program. And what you're saying is, church is important, don't get me wrong. But when is your home going to become the place where you experience Christ?
Let's just be honest. We've done the podcast on this, and we can show note it, whatever. Okay, show note it. Yeah,
I know what you mean.
You know what I meant. We're talking about the 3 places that are of most importance to your family. The school, the home, and the church. And I agree with all that. I agree with myself. Okay,
I do
but
too.
let's look at numbers. The sheer numbers. Your kids are. The most committed church-going kids are spending I'm talking the most would be like 150 hours a year.
Yeah. Not very much.
That is not very much. Most of your kids' foundation, discipleship, everything is going to come from your home. This is why God set up the family the way he did. It is so important. Other people, mentors, church leaders, teachers, so important. Nobody can replace mom and dad.
No, absolutely nobody. And until your home becomes, you restore the altar, the family altar in the home. I'm not going to bore anybody in this, but you go back to the Garden of Eden, the description of the Garden of Eden, if you look at, scholars and things like that, they say it foreshadows the tabernacle where people met with God. So that was where the first family met with God. Where was that? It was their home. It's where they lived. And when we begin to
restore that,
we begin to meet with God in our homes, that's going to make the church gathering more powerful. We're gonna show up to church ready to worship, ready to serve, and all that stuff. It's going to take care of itself. But if it's not going on in the home, can I just say the chances that your kids are going to have a biblical worldview it lowers those chances.
Yep.
And so when we restore that to our homes, I just don't know if I could really say how powerful that is, because then our homes become places of worship from which we send out our kids every day to go out and do ministry at their school, where they work, where they're with their friends.
And I think this is so key to just really even thinking about this. How do I have a biblical worldview?
Yeah.
And am I passing this on? Because guess what? We're all going to come to places, crises, moments where we're going to say, okay, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
Where will I spend eternity? How do I make sense of the craziness that is surrounding me? Okay, how do I make sense of what I've just witnessed? Okay, how do I make sense of all this? And these worldviews, they become these habit-forming beliefs. Yeah. And so your kids need this. You need this. You need to know and be so grounded in God's word that it's like, okay, I know what's happening here. Doesn't mean I'm like, everything's great. It's I can make sense of this because I know who God is and I know what his word says.
The great thing about what's happening in our world right now is we don't have to force conversations, because things are so in your face in the world right now. There are just discussions that are biblical worldview discussions,
like on the daily,
need to happen, but are going to happen every day just because of what we see.
We're just so confronted with everything
out in the world.
Yes, you're so right.
Whatever. And so, but we need to have those discussions. Not be afraid to have them when our kids ask. We need to have those discussions, answer their questions.
You bring it up.
Parents, we need to initiate those conversations. And so, the exciting thing about this, the sky's not falling. I just want to say this. I want to say it again. The sky is not falling. There is a decrease, but I believe, I don't know if it's going to be easy. I don't know if it's going to be quick. I don't know. I will say this. We can reverse the trend. As parents, as church leaders, we can reverse the trend. And if we do this, I believe we will reverse the trend of a lower biblical worldview. But we have to be committed to it. Like you said, it has to be everything we are.
Yeah, everything. And it's going to take it all.
Yeah, it's going to take every bit.
All right, so check out the show notes for all the things that we talked about that I didn't do a very good job of explaining.
We will link it. You can go back. I'd love to.
All right, thanks for listening to the Not On My Watch podcast, and we will see you next time.
See you then.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Not On My Watch podcast. You are a watchman for this time and hour. Don't forget to subscribe and rate this podcast wherever you listen. If you haven't already, head on over to our website, www.notonmywatch.co, for more resources from Jeff and Rochelle. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the next episode. But until then, keep watchful.